You'll remember a Scotsman invented the telephone, but he had to come to America to do it. A German invented the rocket engine, but an American was the first on the moon. For the past century, this nation has specialized in harnessing European genius and giving it room to breathe. From Coca-Cola to the potato crisp, from the paperclip to the typewriter, from the Model T Ford to the dry martini, the Americans have specialized in grabbing hold of really good ideas and turning them into mass-produced products which have asserted their influence on cultures all over the world. So this is now the age of microelectronics, and America is the home of the computer. So it's appropriate that we start our glimpse into the future here, and we ask what sort of world we're going to live in, and will the new technology give us better lives?
Of course, it would be a mistake to get too carried away. Even computerized machines aren't perfect yet. The idea, of course, is to put your money in. It's not meant to pop out. But here beneath the streets of Washington, they built the world's newest underground railway system. The whole thing's controlled by computers. There are no queues for tickets, no clerks to issue them, or inspectors to punch them. Significantly, you see very few railway men or women. The Washington Metro, a railway of the future built now for the city's commuters. Again, the only humans in evidence are the passengers. It's clean, modern, efficient. The energy, the work, the bulk of the responsibility to provide such a service, it all comes from computers.
Computers don't only monitor the fare and ticket collection, but they also control the trains themselves. They're almost fully automatic. The computers regulate the speed, what time they arrive at the station. They apply the brakes and start the train up again. If anything goes wrong, then they'll automatically cut everything off. And there are even computers which monitor those computers.
Okay, thank you, lad. Okay, give you two. Okay, thank you.
Electronic machines do most of the work. It was possible to persuade the unions to accept such low staffing levels because this was a purpose-built railway, completed only a few years ago. There was nothing here before.
Track 1, position 1.
Roger, 904.
Ask him if he's got an AC problem.
He did call me back on that fire alarm.
Hello. Station. Exits on G Street at 7th and 9th. Roger, going too far. Roger.
Now, it would be possible for passengers like me to be the only human beings involved, but as you've just heard, there is one person on board the train because they've deliberately built in a human factor.
People like to know that there's people with people. So we have a computerized system to the edge of the state-of-the-art. But then we always have a human being that you can contact. In the mezzanine, there is always a person that you can ask for directions. Or if one of the machines goes down or goes bad, then he can make minor repairs. In the head of the train announcements are made with a real live human being, even though we're capable of making it computerized.
What's the real significance of using new technology on this? Is it a pointer to what everything's going to be like in the future?
It makes it safer, it makes it more even of operation, it makes it cheaper than hiring hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people whose salaries go up continually through the ages, whereas the machinery doesn't. But it gives a wider horizon, wider mobility to the people themselves.
Computers made it possible for Washington to afford its new railway. That's because the cost of running it will remain stable. People are the most inflationary feature of any business. Their wages only move in one direction, up. Once you've paid for a machine or a computer, that's it. So while London's tube travellers will always pay ever-increasing fares, the costs in Washington will be less influenced by staff wage bills. It's the benefit of having fewer people at work. Dallas, Texas, is a futuristic city which has boomed in recent years. Many big American corporations have moved here. The city's rich, and so are most of the people in it. Texans like to believe they lead the world, and here in a supermarket they do. On the surface it looks like any other, and so do the pre-packed goods. But if you look closely at the packets of instant this and that, you'll see the strange-looking patterns printed on them. They're barcodes. What makes this a supermarket of the future is what goes on behind the scenes. Microelectronic machines weigh and price the meat. They also put on a barcode. The cashiers have become packers, putting the goods in bags. Paying for them is done electronically. The code bars on the packets pass over a laser. It identifies through them the item and the price. The customer automatically receives a detailed receipt. Each cashier on average now deals with 50 items a minute instead of 30. Soon all the computerized tills in the 2,000 branches will be linked to central computers, which detail all the sales, monitor the stocks, and order new goods when they're needed. Again, the significance is that the computer system reduces the need for people. Fewer cashiers, bookkeepers, clerks, and accountants. New York, headquarters of Citibank. And that's a bank with a difference. It's not only a beautiful place to be in, it's one of the most modern banks in the world. You want money? You don't need to queue up to get it from the cashier. You can pay your money in or take it out. Whatever service you need, there's no wait, it's all automatic. The offices at the bank are just as modern. Computers are standard equipment. There's also a certain something passing to and fro.
Once, of course, a human being used to walk around these offices delivering and collecting the mail. And now they've got Beeper, the electronically controlled robot mailman. And he does the journey in about 20 minutes, all on his own. But the irony is that elsewhere in this building, they already have electronically controlled offices. So the mail and the written word are fast becoming obsolete, and that could well put Beeper out of business.
The whole Citibank has been computerized. They're putting in word processor systems. They call them workstations, and these could become commonplace in any office, in any business, anywhere in the world. The girls rarely use a typewriter anymore. They sit in front of a computer terminal operated by a silicon chip.
I've been using this machine for about a year and a half.
What does it do?
Well, I'm able to call up Mr. White's weekly calendar.
His diary, you mean?
His diary.
Yeah.
He's got a calendar through 1980 on the system. And if they ask me to book a meeting in 1985, I can do it.
He's going to be a busy man, isn't he?
Very busy.
What else does he do?
Well, I can type for him.
On that?
Yes. And store it away. Put it in his inbox electronically. And he can look at it inside his office. if he wants to make his changes, if I can trust him to type it in, he can store it away and I can just look at it again. And
What about mail? I mean, how does it work as far as letters and posting is concerned?
I can draft the memo, have Bob's okay on it, and immediately mail it to California. They'll receive it in about 2 minutes over the telephone lines.
So that's a lot quicker than letters, let's face it.
Yes, and we'll get an immediate response because they can mail it back 2 minutes later if they're ready and prepared.
So you've learned to depend upon this?
Depend upon it. I wouldn't know what to do without it. I very rarely sharpen my pencil.
The computerization is not confined to the secretarial section. Every clerical function in the bank is being automated. And of course, it'll mean fewer staff.
Overall, there probably ends up having to be less people. But I think you end up with fewer jobs, with better job satisfaction for the people that are there. It improves the job significantly for the staff. Requires some upgrading of the staffs, but in terms of pay scale, most of the jobs that we've had have gone up significantly for the people, and the amount of job content and stuff that they've had have been very, very good.
In Europe, many people believe that new technology is going to create enormous amounts of unemployment in the service industries. Banks are just one example, and that previously secured jobs like these will soon begin to disappear. White-collar unions in Britain, like ASTMS, are currently launching campaigns to warn about the consequences of the new technology to jobs. Research, books and posters so evocative that this one was refused advertising space by British Rail.
Overall, it must mean a diminishing of the number of jobs available, not only in the UK, but in every industrialized country, in Europe, in the United States, absolutely everywhere. It will also go on over a considerable time period. This diminishing will go on perhaps over 20, 30, maybe even up to 50 years. And whilst you look at life and you think, well, it may have happened before, we've had industrial revolutions before, we haven't got a 50-year period to play with, we haven't even got a 20-year period to play with.
This fear is shared by unions throughout Europe. At the headquarters of the largest German union, IG Metall, Gunther Friedrich has been examining the effects of the new technology over the past 10 years.
What they do with the new technology is to use it for labor-saving devices. And it's certainly much more easy to use it for labor-saving devices because it includes only very limited risks. To innovate new products and to find new markets is much more risky.
There are new products, of course, but even many of these could be labor-saving.
This is similar to the video disc, only it'll be used to store data. It's a new development which will be available in about 3 years' time. Now, it's really a gigantic memory bank. And what a memory it's got. A laser is used to burn tiny little holes into a covering inside the plastic, and it'll take 10 billion little bits of information, and that's what they look like magnified. Now, you can only use superlatives to describe a thing like this. For example, you could get the entire Encyclopedia Britannica on one disk, or if you wanted to, you could store the names of every single person in Britain, and that's 55 million names.
It would be easy to store all the information in these filing cabinets on a disk like that. Most clerical work is about shuffling information around. Developments like these will make the work easier and faster. And of course, it will reduce the need for labor. In many offices, and it's thought banking and insurance could face the first big impact, unless new kinds of jobs are created, up to half the existing staff may no longer be needed in their present work. Everywhere, machines are beginning to take over what we do.
We're sorry, but because of the temporary equipment condition, your call did not go through. Will you please hang up and try again? This is the recording.
Fewer people in telecommunications. You won't need so many operators, fewer engineers. The polite, friendly voice will come from a chip.
Emergency calls can be placed through your operator.
Old electromechanical equipment is being rapidly replaced by microcomputers. Already thousands have lost their jobs making these old exchanges. And even fewer will service the new equipment because it's so reliable. At Texas Instruments, most internal mail is sent electronically. It makes sense. It only takes 20 seconds to get to its destination by satellite to any part of the company anywhere in the world. If electronic mail were to spread, what would be the effects? 70% of all mail today is from businesses which won't want old-fashioned letters and the slow postal service. But what will happen to the sorters, the postmen, to all the post office workers no one needs when electronic mail is with us? And what will happen then to our own personal letters? It's not easy to tell. The fact is, unemployment prospects are still at the forecasting stage. So much of it is speculation, and it's by far the most conflicting and controversial feature of the microelectronic debate.
If one looks what has happened in the past, since the computer industry started, for example, I think there's no evidence whatsoever to say that people have been put out of work. In the 1950s, for example, we thought that the computer would take over everything. It really hasn't. And in fact, the number of jobs in Europe, for example, associated with the data processing, I would guess will be something like 1 million now, where there was 0 25 years ago.
Your view is exactly the opposite to that held by a lot of trade union leaders who say that there's going to be widespread unemployment, that prospects of, say, 5 million unemployed in this country are not unrealistic.
I think it's just rubbish. I think, frankly, no one knows what's going to happen. The CBI, a couple of years ago, did a study which said that if we got just 1% more of world trade and manufacturing industry, then we would get 400,000 jobs in this country.
I think we could probably produce our present output of goods and services with something like 20% of our current labour force.
But that means that we may have to face the possibility of up to 80% unemployment in normal manufacturing industries among people for whom we have no further jobs.
I don't think that will happen. In my opinion, if we embrace the new technology and use it, it will create many new jobs. It will create a very significant shift of jobs, and new products and new industries can be built to replace the old ones.
One thing is certain, the way we work will change. In this office, stock figures for sales are held in a data bank. That's run by Prestel, the post office's new computerized information service. GKN distributors intend to let their customers dial into Prestel themselves and order directly without having to make telephone calls to the office. This will mean that the salesman will be doing a different kind of job.
I think it is going to prejudice the jobs of the ineffective salesman, but it could enhance the prospects of the intelligent, efficient salesman.
In what way would it hurt the ineffective one?
Well, the ineffective one is by and large a door knocker, and if we analyze what his job is, it is to say what his company does, what the products are, what the services are, and what the resources are.
So it could do away with a lot of the, sales spiel? Or?
I think it will cut to a minimum the nonsense, which is terribly expensive in time.
Eventually, what will this mean for industry as a whole? What would you say it would be?
Dynamic, enormously volatile, and destructive to the orthodox methods of management and many of the functions.
All over the world, in offices and factories, in every kind of industry, in every type of business, people are going to have to face up to a gradual but dramatic change in the way they work, in what jobs they do, and to prepare themselves for change. Of tremendous importance is how we educate people to cope.
You will have new data information available through your television set with Prestel and CFAX and View Data and so on. So increasingly people will be able to call up instantly vast amounts of information, and in my opinion only the experts are going to be able to cope with this. So it does present a real understanding credibility problem.
What we're doing, in fact, then, is the danger of creating two sorts of society. Those who know and have the power,
of that knowledge and those who don't know.
Indeed.
And the vast bulk of us apply.
And if I had to say what is the most important thing this nation has got to do, it has got to improve its education, the whole population. So increasingly people are helped to understand this sort of thing, and increasingly people can be retrained for a new and different career. So in the whole field of handling education and flow of information, that is our single biggest problem area.
Isn't it? It goes, just to get the answer in.
It will start with the young, and youngsters themselves will have to be educated to accept computers as part of daily life.
We'll go. Let's see if you can get one game in off him. Ah, you're out. So?
Spell another. A-N-O-T-H-E-R. That is right. Now try beige.
We put these American speak and spell machines designed for the domestic market into a London school. They're operated by silicon chips, and because they're relatively cheap, educational aids like these may one day replace many of the conventional spelling books.
They're attractive things to handle, and so particularly children perhaps with a spelling problem, it makes spelling not a chore but something that they enjoy. They also like to feel that they're, in inverted commas, using a computer, and they can boast about it to the other children in the school who aren't. And it has actually helped to improve their spelling, and in the case of the speak and spell, where they have to read as well, improve their confidence in reading words straight from the machine.
You're in, George.
These children live in Dallas. They belong to the city's Mexican community, and the computers are helping to teach them Spanish and English. The machines treat each child as an individual. They can go at their own speed, not the speed of the class. The computer is patient and friendly.
Read and find the missing word. You got it.
The teachers write the programs, so their job is changing too. And each child's performance is carefully monitored. At a school for children in a prosperous middle-class district, computers are now in general use.
Sheet with your name on it. You will have a seat by that machine. Then we can begin.
Here they're worried about general math skills, just as we are. Their solution is to allow the children a short period each day on the computers, practicing their arithmetic. There are 8 machines in the classroom. The total cost of installing them was about £3,500, and that's only 1/3 of the teacher's salary.
Children are extremely motivated toward the computer. It's very patient, it deals with them, they like to see their name on the screen, they thoroughly enjoy it. It's a wonderful thing to watch them coming to work on the microcomputers.
420. Less 90. 420.
Of course, computers are used in British education. Here at Edinburgh University, local children are taking advantage of work built around the new technology. Robots teach them about angles and geometry. The added bonus is that they learn about robots and computers too. But this is a rare example in Britain. The number of children who can take advantage of this type of education is infinitesimal. And it's that government spending cuts likely to hit education are unlikely to raise the prospects of work like this becoming widespread.
Okay, so what are you doing now then?
That's not the case in other countries. In France, plans are already being made to put micros into every secondary school and computers firmly on the curriculum.
The children should know what they can do, what they can't do, and dream about the things they might do in the future, and that's an important part of education. The other thing is that, viewed in quite a different way, you can think of the computer or programming a computer as actually disciplining the mind in a way that is reminiscent of the teaching of Latin. People used to argue that learning Latin disciplined your thought, And when you program a computer, you really have to think out the problem very precisely in a step-by-step fashion.
So this is sort of, what, new Latin?
And it's like a new Latin almost.
It's not just children who will see changes. The computer is affecting professional people of all kinds.
For me. Right, but I think that's gone as far as we can at the moment, hasn't it? Dealing with your late sister's estate.
In this solicitor's office, a word processor is already cutting down the time taken to draw up legal documents. But how long before legal advice itself will be available from a computer system? Will the professionals give up their secrets to the computer? It's already happening. Here in Scotland, at a hospital a few miles from Edinburgh. When patients suffering from abdominal pain arrive at this hospital, a computer will aid the doctors to diagnose the cause.
About 40% of patients who come to hospital with acute abdominal pain don't need to come at all. But before we had these additional procedures to help us make a diagnosis, we had to admit a certain number, just in case.
In the past, has it been possible that patients have been operated on without really needing it?
Oh yes, that's true.
And what's the machine done to that?
Oh, it's reduced that from about 20% to about 8%.
First, there's a normal medical examination.
You saw your doctor this morning and he thinks you may have appendicitis.
Yes.
What kind of pain is it?
It's a sore pain, but it's not all that bad.
It doesn't come and go in waves.
No.
Then the doctor asks set questions and records the answers on a form. This is the information which will be fed into the computer. By a process of elimination and by comparing the patient's symptoms with an information bank of case histories, it'll make a diagnosis. In this case, it's 60% likely the man is suffering from appendicitis, and the printout lists the other possibilities. The computer is helping to raise the medical standards of young doctors at this hospital. It's bringing some of them up to consultancy level within a matter of months.
Their accuracy coming a year after qualification is about 50% without the system. With the system of documentation and the computer, their mean average is about 75, which is very close to consultant accuracy.
How does the machine do that?
The machine disciplines the young doctor to ask the right questions.
The thing is, computers can go wrong. You always hear of the extra £1 million you've got on your bank account.
Well, the machine is as good as the information that's put into it, in the first instance. So if the young doctor takes a bad history or examines incorrectly, the machine will come up with something that may not be correct. But it has far more items to compare and is more likely to be right than the doctor.
What's been the attitude of your own profession towards this?
They don't like it.
They don't like it?
Well, shall we say they didn't like it, because it's spreading very rapidly now.
The day is coming when intelligent machines will become so part of our lives that we'll wonder how we ever manage without them. This architect is using a computer to build the shapes and to design electronically. But when it becomes commonplace for our houses, our offices and our cities to be designed this way, will those still working here remember the men and women who used to design shapes by hand? Yeah. Will those fortunate enough to control the machines have time to think about the people left behind?
What sort of people will find it impossible to find any work at all?
Well, funnily enough, I think it's basically people in what are presently called semi-skilled trades, jobs, in other words, which can easily be taken over by machines. Curiously enough, they're the kind of things that are rather highly valued as jobs in our society at the moment, because the combination of brain and hand and eye skills, say machine tool operation and things like that, very easily performed by machines. Now, the sort of things that at the moment we rather debase and turn our noses up at, the service industries, being a waitress, let's say, or someone who cuts hair. Now, these are things which are going to be an awful long time before you actually get a robot which is going to come and serve you a decent meal or cut your hair with any degree of safety. So I think that those things, the service industries, are going to expand rather.
People, millions and millions of people, may disappear from the rat race. The need to work may be replaced by the need to live. If machines will replace so many jobs, the drudgery of daily life may be the struggle to find things to do, filling in the time, utilizing our leisure.
I think we may well see a move to shorter working hours, shall we say, over the course of a year. But that really doesn't worry me, and I would see that there will be developments in three areas. First of all, I think there'll be those people associated with creativity, creation of one kind or another, the artists, the potters. I think all sorts of creative work will go on. Secondly, excuse me, I think that I will see that there will be a development in what I call generally the caring industries. And I suppose the third thing is just generally the development of the leisure industries, the service industries, and I would see really quite an increase in employment opportunities provided by those service industries.
We just succeeded to reach, for the membership of our union, a vacation period of 6 weeks per year. And we can certainly reduce the working time per week. Or what we also do is to reduce the working time per hour.
We need more health care. We don't treat the mentally and physically handicapped properly. We don't educate people properly. And they're all people-to-people jobs. And you can start training people to actually do those sort of jobs. A second way of doing it is to actually work share. To say, look, we work too much anyway. Why is life all about working? Why isn't it about leisure and work and families and work? In which case, I happen to think you diminish the number of trips to work rather than shorten the working week. You go for 3-day weekends, 4-day weekends, things like that. And the last way is there will still be some people who fall through the net, who will not be re-employable in last analysis.
In order to ask society to accept something like that, people will have to change as well. There is always a price to pay in any revolution. But are we prepared to accept that present-day social attitudes may be turned upside down?
If you play it wrong, if you just let markets work, if you say to a very substantial minority of your population, terribly sorry, you're going to be cut off from all the things other people have got because you haven't got a job and you haven't got the money to buy the things. If you don't change attitudes to things like public expenditure and make life better for people, then the only way you're going to run things is at bayonet point or with a gun.
Computers aid the fight against terrorism. Germany now has the world's most sophisticated police computer network. At demonstrations, faces are photographed. Computers are now able to put a name to the picture by measuring the distance between the nose, the ear, and the mouth. All state agencies will become linked by computers. Any agent or policeman will have immediate access to private information on over 3 million citizens. The fundamental human right to privacy is quickly disappearing.
Well, the capacity to control society because of this technology is almost limitless, unfortunately. That's why we've got to be so vigilant it's untrue. You see, we're going to have immense databases, amounts of information which could go into everyone's home. Someone's going to control that. You can't do it without this technology. You're going to have personnel records built up at work. You're going to be able to link computer to computer. You're going to have to be able to link computers across continents, just bouncing off of satellites. Human beings won't come into it. And the amount of information and data which is going from one bit to the other bit, if that is just allowed free rein and you get some unfortunately nasty people controlling that data, then I really think it's God help society.
In Sweden, unlike Britain and most of the other countries in the so-called free world, they've already established state controls to protect citizens from abuses of both public and commercial computer data banks. It looks so innocent, a little piece of plastic enclosing a tinier bit of silicon. But only now are we waking up to what it's going to mean to each and every one of us.
The work ethic, which has been a dominant thing for a very long time, is going to have to disappear. It's an old thing summed up in the phrase, the devil finds work for idle hands to do. It was always thought to be improper to sit around doing nothing. Now, the microprocessor, as have previous developments in technology, is going to make the world more affluent. And following the trend, the historical trend, it's going to mean that society pays people more and more money to do less and less work.
You've got to look back at what happened with the steam engine, because that was the other great boon to mankind. That started industry and the Industrial Revolution. And think what happened then. I mean, if you go from then to now, it sounds lovely, we've just progressed smoothly, but we haven't. There was immense poverty, there was starvation, there was nearly a political revolution with the Chartists. We had to have a political reform act to even make the politics work in Britain in 1832. I mean, the whole time was appalling, and it took 20 to 30 years to sort that out.
The problem on the whole is an economic problem, because the whole question of the allocation of employment, who's at work and who isn't at work, means that if we have tension there, it means that some people will have, some people will have not. They will have differential access in the sense they can buy more goods and services if they're at work. But that pattern of employment, that pattern of work allocation and therefore income allocation is not likely to be uniformly distributed. The old, the young, the unskilled, the coloured workers, the centres of old and decaying industries, all those will be badly hit. Now, is that fair? I suspect it not only is not fair, but it's going to make an intolerable society. On the other hand, if we can find the transitional adjustment and see how to make a more fair society on that basis, then the overwhelming good that can come about this technology, the access to new goods and services, the wonders of medicine and science, better ways of looking after each other, better ways of caring for each other, it could be a wonderful, brave new world. And I feel on the whole, the good will outweigh the bad, provided that we take stock and make our plans accordingly.
In microelectronics, it seems to me the good side vastly outweighs the bad side. It will enable us to get rid of much of the drudgery, produce many more goods and services for the good of mankind, and give him access to a better life than he's ever had before, if it's handled wisely.